The Gauteng Department of Infrastructure is now giving an update on that fire that claimed the lives of 3 firefighters. Those firefighters were battling the blaze at that government building in Johannesburg, which houses the offices of the Provincial Health, Human Settlements and Cooperative Governance Departments. Let's take a listen to that briefing.
The fire is still on, and we have asked for, and this is through Premier David Makhura, we have asked for reinforcements from the city of Ekurhuleni and the city of Tshwane. The Premier has asked for them to come and provide support. And we have been assured that the fire is being contained, and that in the next 3 hours we will get an update on where the fire is at this point. So we will check with the team again in the next 3 hours. The sense we are getting is that with the new reinforcements and the new teams that are coming, it should be possible to to contain the fire to where it is. So that is where we are with respect to the fire. We are also aware that the fire is causing an environmental problem to the neighboring buildings, including our workers who are around the buildings. We have received reports that there's general discomfort with the effect of the fire, particularly the smoke, that is affecting neighboring buildings. And we have issued a directive that where buildings are affected by the smoke coming from the building of Bank of Lisbon, heads of departments should evacuate the officials as a matter of precaution and safety. So that matter, we have issued a directive as well. And we will monitor the fire today, and we will certainly be able to communicate with the departments that are affected by the smoke. Let me also just update you on the condition of the workers that are still in hospital. Last night, some of you would have still been on site when Premier David Makhura and Minister Judas Nesi came, and we did announce that the Premier and Minister, myself, MEC Muilwa, we did go to Melpark Hospital. And at Melpark Hospital, we found that initially our report was that there were workers that were admitted at another health facility, but they were all subsequently released, and that is called the Garden City Hospital. The workers there were released. When we left last night, all workers were released except 5. And the 5, it was the one employee of the Department of Health and 4 firefighters. The doctors gave us the confirmation that the firefighters and the employee of the Department of Health were in a, none of the workers was in a critical condition. That is the confirmation that we got from the hospital, the doctors at the hospital. So to that extent, we wish those workers that are still at the hospital a speedy recovery, and we are pleased that the doctors have indicated that they do not expect anything that would indicate critical condition. The other matter that I would like to just brief you on is on the condition of the buildings. We did last night say we have received a report that pointed out to non-compliance. I spoke to that myself and went public on it, and we're very open and transparent on that issue. That indeed the buildings were found not to be compliant, particularly the Bank of Lisbon, and that we have received a report just last week. And let me also just indicate that there are other 8 buildings, and Bank of Lisbon is 8, as I did indicate yesterday. We have had a preliminary meeting this morning with the team that is supporting us, the team that compiled the report for us. We have agreed on another meeting at 5 o'clock this afternoon with the team to come back and take us through the detail of the report to indicate the condition of each facility and what needs to be done to act on the proposals that they have with respect to those buildings. So there's a meeting at 5 where we will deal with the way forward on the report after we have completed the briefing with the team on the report that we had commissioned. And of course, we have had to consult with the unions. We have had a meeting with NEHAU, but NEHAU will report to its members on what that meeting was. So that was one of the issues that made us to postpone the discussions on the condition of the building. Let me just confirm that Premier David Makura last night, for those who were there, did indicate that we will not take our officials and staff to buildings that, in terms of this report that has been commissioned, is found to be non-compliant. And we are very much pleased to also just indicate that we will not rush workers back into any building. We will make sure that the buildings are compliant and that the workers return to buildings that we are confident that they comply, whilst we have clarified that the real cause of the fire still has to be determined, as certainly everybody will agree that fire can catch any building, including a building that is fully serviced and compliant. Even a new building, state-of-the-art building, we did indicate, and we gave an example of the Premier's office, that it's our high-security building. It caught fire last year. But the most important issue that we want to assure our staff, our personnel, and the people of our province, and the families and parents of everybody who works with the provincial government, number one, is that we are very much pleased that yesterday 1,115 employees were safely evacuated from the Bank of Lisbon. And the workers that were finally admitted to hospital have been released, except one, and of course the 3 emergency workers. So what we really appreciate is to further strengthen our evacuation procedures. Every building, whether it's a government building, private building, any building, should have proper evacuation procedures. And I think even with the Premier's office last year, the Bank of Lisbon yesterday, we promptly, swiftly, efficiently, and effectively saved lives. And as we have always been saying, that the subsequent tragic loss of life of the firefighters, and we have conveyed our condolences to the families, is a matter that we believe there should be a separate investigation on that issue so that the families can find closure on if 1,115 people could be safely evacuated from the building. We need a clear report on, therefore, what were the causes of the death of the 3 workers. We wouldn't want to speculate on that. We have seen in the media reports. We have also read comments about the city of Joburg officials talking to a number of issues. That is not our space. Our principles of cooperative governance will require that we don't enter. The post-evacuation period is a period that has been taken over by the firefighters, and all of us and the families should find a proper report of what happened, and if there's any negligence, the law should take its course. On the cause of the fire, we also believe that there must be a separate investigation on that, and that should also be able to say what was the real cause of the fire. And in both cases, if anyone, irrespective of who they are, if they are found based on the report to have either acted outside the requirements of policy, of legislation, of any regulation, we should be able to take prompt, swift action without fear or favor, irrespective of who that is. The laws of our country must take full effect and course. The other point we didn't mention yesterday that we just wanted to confirm is the process of moving officials from the Bank of Lisbon had already started. HOD can share with us the dates on which we had already started with the procurement process. And I just want to confirm that, for example, as you know, we have said there are 3 departments that are in that building. I'll start with COGTA. COGTA and Human Settlement are the 2 areas where the building was found to have had problems in terms of the Department of Labor notices. So already this year, by the 7th of March this year, we had commenced already with supply chain processes to find an alternative building for the officials at COGTA. How it works is that a department will approach ourselves, the Department of Infrastructure Development, and formalize a request that they need accommodation. And they will also confirm that they have money to pay for it. And based on that, we do our supply chain processes. So that was done, and that is why with COGTA, we have finalized supply chain for the appointment of a service provider to provide accommodation for this department. So we had already started with the relocation process already in March this year. Department of Human Settlement, as it was mentioned last night for those who were there, the buildings, the floors that were condemned by the Department of Labor, people were relocated, but the department had approached us, and already on the 22nd of July, we have already gone to find alternative accommodation for them, and that is why this week by tomorrow we will notify the department about the service provider that has been appointed for their facility. So clearly with these 2 departments, they had approached us and they had said to us that there is a challenge with the buildings, and they requested us to find alternative accommodation for them, and the process had started. Department of Health, whose floors were never found to have been condemned by the Department of Labor, we have actually indicated to them that it is very much important that they also indicate budget availability and whether there's a request for a building, but the building has already burned down. We will now have to relocate the Department of Health. Yeah. So the process of relocation had long started, and the relocation of COGTA and Human Settlement, when it's completed, because once procurement is done, the owner of the new building need to make final preparations to the building, contractual obligations, service level agreements, and areas of performance have to be agreed upon. So we just want to indicate that there's been an issue raised about what have we been doing. So 3 things. One is that we had commissioned a full detailed report, and just this morning, when we were meeting with a company that was helping us with these services, they've indicated doing piecemeal, reactive, solving one small problem at a time is what has been happening over the years. What was important was to do a comprehensive analysis, solve the problem all at once, because you can do patchwork, and patchwork will not be able to help, and that is why we were having this comprehensive approach. So that we did, we have told you, we have shared with you some aspects of the report, and will continue to. I've already said last night I'll call a special press conference next week to share with you the detail of the report itself. Of course, we are aware that it can be leaked, but it will be leaked as our report, which we have announced to you already. Now, Gauteng and human settlement, we were working on the relocation process, and we have just finalized it. Now, the last point is that, so starting from next week, we will start with finding alternative buildings. Actually, we have started. We are in consultation with different service providers and owners of the buildings. That process has started, and they will tell us what buildings they have. We will not rush, as I said, people coming back, but we will also not get workers staying at home for too long. The other intervention that we are going to be making is that as a Department of Infrastructure Development, the procedure has always been that departments must approach us to indicate needs and requirements for alternative accommodation. When they do that, we don't waste time. We go into the market and we procure. But that model, I think it has been demonstrated that it will not help us. DID must now be the single authority that decides on who stay in what building under what conditions. Because to wait for departments to approach us, it clearly demonstrates that it's a reactive approach, and that model has to be changed. DID must be able to say to a department, we don't think you must be in this building, and we urge you to relocate, instead of them approaching us to say, we need a building, we have a budget, and we will also have to engage with our provincial treasury to engage those departments on their budgets. But let me just conclude by saying we've got a program that is called the Kopanong Precinct. As some of you might be aware, this is a project that started in 2001. And all the years, the project was never completed. This is a project to bring 18 buildings of government to be refurbished and be put in a fully compliant stage. It has been going on over many years. What we have since done and where we are now with that project is, since this new administration, the current administration came in, we worked on one procedure, and that procedure was PPP model of delivery of funding. And we have been working on compliance with PPP, and we have now reached a final stage where we have the last approval that we request from National Treasury, and that process is going on very well. So the Kopanong Precinct is a 16 billion project to refurbish and make sure that government buildings in the whole of the province are in good condition. So the provincial government over the years has been sitting with this challenge of the buildings, and the PPP model that we're working on is the final solution. The intervention to do the condition assessment of the 8 buildings is in transition to the Kopanong Precinct project, which is our final solution, which we hope to go to the market before, anytime soon, once we know that Treasury has approved. We will not speculate on when will we go to the market if we don't have the approval of the last process which will allow us to go to the market, which indicate that we have made progress. Unlike the previous time, we have confirmed one model, and that model is financially sustainable, is the best model, is best practice, and we will make sure that we resolve once and for all the condition of our buildings, because most of these buildings are as old as many years back, and many of them will not comply fully with many various legislations in place, which requires even reconfigurations of the buildings in order to make sure that they comply. So this is an update of where we are. So the relocation process, tomorrow as we meet at 5, we will be getting a plan of, okay, in these other buildings, what is the relocation technical process? Because we don't want to move people out of buildings into buildings that could be proved to be a problem tomorrow. As we said, fire can happen to any building, but it is better when a building is in compliance, as we have said, with the Premier's office, which is a much more better managed building. So we don't want to move people into risky buildings, and we will stagger in and phase in it carefully, building by building at a time, making sure that we don't put people in risky buildings. So that process, we are tying it up at 5 o'clock this evening. So to that extent, there was also a plan with the city of Joburg to visit the families of the deceased, and that's where I want to end. We have been waiting for communication from the city to advise us on those details. MEC Muidwa is not here because they are meeting with the families of the deceased. I think all of them have came together, and we have assigned him to represent the provincial government.